Reddit tree is back with the paranormal activities all round the world. Comment down if you had such experiences and subscribe to never miss an upload. Here we go. First event. Gas station cryptic. My friend, we'll call him Matt, and I were driving through the Mojave in the middle of the night, going to a friend's bachelor party that was taking place on a friend's property way in North Nevada, like the Carson City area. It's probably 1 a.m. and we're driving through Kramer Junction. We're bored and begin talking ghost stories and cryptic stories we've heard or encountered. He grew up and still lives in a haunted house. Until recently I hadn't had much happen to me, but I've heard a lot of things. At one point he even talks about how he once saw a skinwalker out on a trail and he and his dog passed it peacefully as he eyed it. Whatever. I'm driving just fine. It's a very dark night, no moon if I remember correctly. C-shape keeping pace with care off in distance. I wouldn't worry about it. Ask Matt if he sees the shit. He doesn't at first, but then he does. Every now and then catch glimpses of movement. Doesn't help our nerves that we're the only ones on the road, and all our guns are buried under camping gear. After like 45 minutes we finally stop seeing it. We need gas, so I pull into the Chevron at Coso Junction. What's weird about this place is that it seems unnaturally dark around the Chevron, while the lights of the Chevron are bright and beckoning. We pull into the place and we immediately feel like we're being watched and a smothering feeling of dread. It's so strong you can feel it compressing your chest. I've only felt like that one other time before. It's completely empty. And we both really need to piss. I go over to a pole near the building and piss there out of view of cameras. Matt just fucking runs off into the dark. As soon as he leaves the lights it's like he jumped into a black hole. I've never seen a darkness so suppressive. I then fill up the car, freaking out, singing worship songs, and fingering my K-bar. The entire time I swear I can feel a presence in the brush to our north, and it's fucking huge. After an eternity, my tank is full. I get into my car and lock the door. Oh sweet Jesus, I feel safer but not by much. I then move the car around and point it east where Matt ran off to. Turn the bright on and can't see shit past the lights of the Chevron. It was the weirdest fucking thing. The gas station lights and the lights of my car just seemed to stop existing like 20 yards past the light fixtures. Again after an eternity, Matt finally comes out of the darkness and gets to the car. Before I let him in, ask him to verify himself by saying something only we would know. As we pull out and finally get back on the highway, the feeling of oppressive dread finally goes away. A year later I did some research. Coso Junction did at one point have an Indian massacre. And when I talked to Matt about it, he agrees it felt like we were on the verge of a different dimension or something because time seemed to freeze there. I have been back there somewhat recently, also at night at a similar time with Matt and one of our other friends on the way to a different trip. None of the same vibes, and I could easily see several hundred feet beyond the gas station lights. Second event. Happy ending to my brief haunting by my dead grandfather's spirit. This doesn't involve a ghost, which I have seen but not this time, but it involves being haunted by an invasive, creepy spirit, and how directly and firmly asking him to stop helped. My mom's dad was a disgusting human being and I had virtually no contact with him over my lifetime. I met him once as a newborn and then again when I was around 12. My mom, obviously knowing his character, kept interactions between us at a minimum. This was also helped by us living across the country most of my life thus far, and then when we moved back to the same coast, we were still quite far apart. Anyway, he was mostly estranged from my mom over my lifetime, really only talking to exchange emails or cards on Father's Day or their birthdays. My mom's siblings were less estranged from him and were closer in location to him but still kept him at bay and weren't close. So this June, my mom wrote him a Father's Day email to check up on him and wish him well. It never got responded to, which my mom didn't think much of because he was weird and was prone to not responding to stuff. In the first few days of July, one of my mom's siblings called her to tell her that a neighbor called the cops because she hadn't seen him for a while, and a cop and one of my mom's siblings entered his house to find his severely decomposing body. He had been dead for quite a while, and obviously hadn't answered my mom's email because he was dead several weeks by the time he was found. My mom left shortly after for a while, which is relevant because I was at home for several weeks during the summer in between moves. Anyway, when my mom left I was untouched by his spirit for several days, and thought I was in the clear. I've seen several ghosts in the past but none of them were of people I've known, so I wasn't that concerned, although I was keeping an eye out for it. However, a few days in I started having definite spiritual activity in my bedroom while I was trying to sleep. I felt extremely uneasy, even nauseous, extremely rare for me. I have an iron stomach, and I had an overwhelming feeling I just don't know how to describe. If you felt it, you know. I just knew in my gut and in my heart that he was watching over me. This may have been comforting if it was someone else, but because it was him I freaked out. There is no doubt in my mind what it was. It repeated for a few nights, never during the day. Sometimes I cried during it. I felt his presence within my body. It was so disturbing. I felt so touched and invaded. I felt like he was trying to shove himself into me, trying to take me over and get a hold on me. It made me feel uncomfortable, dirty in an invaded way. It was like he was hanging in the air, trying to read into my brain. When my mom returned, I told her about my experience. She is a hardcore, logical skeptic, so I was worried she would be suspicious, but she broke down crying and we had an emotional breakdown together. She told me she believed me 100%, and she spoke directly to him, telling him to leave me alone. She told me he didn't mean any harm, that he wouldn't mean any harm to his granddaughter, but he never understood boundaries, and if she told him to stay away, he would. I was a bit skeptical of this, but I trust my mother deeply, so I was really hoping she would end up putting a stop to it. We were both crying as she told him he needed to leave me alone. Believe it or not, talking to him directly officially put an end to it. I know I'm stupid, but I was so disturbed and unsettled while the spiritual haunting were happening that I never thought of doing this. However, I had more faith in my mother doing this because he knew her better than me and she was speaking on behalf of me as a mother. Hey there you, yes you, please help me get 50 subscribers, subscribe now to get updated every day. Last but not the least scary event. Dream of a bald yellow-eyed demon. Is it possible to dream of a face you've never seen in real life? I had a nightmare I had a few years ago that still sticks out to me. I'd just gotten home from a trip and was at the airport getting a cab to go home. Found a ride, looked like a nondescript, older model white cab, and told the cabbie my destination as I was getting in the back seat. I could see this guy was bald from the back, was wearing what looked like a brown overcoat. He nodded and said nothing and started driving. Now along the way from the airport to my house are a few underpasses and one or two longer tunnel. Not overly long, maybe 500 meters or less. In the dream, however, the first tunnel we took was longer than usual. I was starting out the window relaxed, looking the lights on the walls and the trucks we were overtaking, but it was taking an unusually long amount of time to get to the other side. I could see the billboards outside the end of the tunnel we'd be exiting, but after what felt like 15-20 minutes of traveling, the cabbie suddenly stepped on it and we were going at speeds of what felt like 150, 170 km/h. The cabbie was randomly swerving, overtaking a couple of trucks and cars, blaring their horns as we went. I was yelling, "Hey! Slow down! Try and get the cabbie's attention." Suddenly he turned at me, while still going at a ridiculous velocity past the speed limit, mind you, and this guy was pale as a ghost. Had a face I would describe looked closest to Gary Oldman as Dracula from the Bram Stoker's 1992 movie, razor sharp fangs, but maybe the creepiest thing about him was he had these evil yellow eyes with tiny black slits for pupils. He started laughing and pointed his head back at the road and drove on. This was when I realized I was in a dream and jolted awake with my heart racing. I remember waking up with a name in mind that I somehow subconsciously knew was his, that I immediately typed on Google to look up but found nothing. I don't know why I didn't save that name for later. I might have been too shaken up. I only got a good look at him for maybe a second, but I still remember that face to this day. Somehow I'm convinced that I took elements I'd seen from random sources, faces I'd seen in real life, movies, snake's eyes from watching animal videos, and somehow subconsciously put them together to assemble this guy. Has anyone ever seen something similar to this? I'd love to hear your thoughts.